Heather, how long have you been coming here now? You moved from California. How long has it been?
2.5 years.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Boy,
Well,
it feels...
it'll be 3 years in January.
3 years in January. Okay, it feels like you've been here forever. Thank you. And what a great job you've done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, the wonder of peace. You know, Norwegian Foundation for Scientists and Education, or educators, did a study. And what they found out is that since 3600 BC, that there's only been 292 years of peace in the world. Defining peace is no war, for a second. Only 292 years, and 286 years were in one swell swoop, however you say that, that took place during way back when, back 1400, something like that. And what they also knew was that approximately 14,351 battles or wars have been waged. That of those 13,351 wars, they lost over 3 billion people, the lives of 3 billion people. And that also that of those 292 years of peace, as we said, a couple of them took place during our lifetime, where there was actually no war in the world. And we wouldn't think that, we wouldn't know that as we listen to the news, as we watch things. Most of us are brought up with, candidly, what I call a warring consciousness. If you're a Judeo-Christian or come from a Judeo-Christian background, you will have probably within you, if you're not careful, and be aware, a warring consciousness. Because all of the history of the Hebrew Bible and all the history of Christianity has been about war, actually, if you think about it. And so we don't have a great track record when it comes to what I'm trying to say. So as we look at this history, one of the things we became aware of is that we need a recipe for a Christmas of peace. And Vicki Boucher, our chef, will share that recipe with you. And Ricardo Boucher will be the associate or assistant chef.
So we go into this little skit now, where we want to share with you I'm the chef, Vicki Victoria. I'm from the older country. I don't know what an older country that is, but it's from the older country. And this is Ricky Ricardo.
And any country we are in, when we're there, it's an old country.
Okay, so we have to get everything ready. Yeah. So first of all, we get ourselves ready.
That's all right. We got to dress as a part.
And we're going to base it on this book. It's called Pre-Soup. Chef Jerry Buffalo, real book, taught us this recipe. So first of all, we get Ricky ready. Here's a Ricky. Woo! But not yet. That's your myth. Just you. And then this is, yes, this is what we need for Ricky, because sometimes he has explosions in the kitchen. Last time we did this, the microwave blew up. So here we go. Here we go. They think we're kidding.
Man.
All right, there we go.
We know kiddo.
So, all right. So this is a recipe. It takes a lot of work. But first, as with everything, we have to have the right foundation. And so the foundation comes when we are ready. See?
What is a foundation?
Yes, foundation. Okay. So first we get all of this. All right. Mm-hmm. So you see, we start with the kettle. Now the kettle is like your consciousness and my consciousness. We have to keep it clean. It takes a lot of work to keep our consciousness clean. Let me tell you, you got to scrub, you got to pray, you got to work and scrape. It is just on your knees work to keep the kettle clean.
Did you get the dog hair out?
So yes.
Thank you.
So now the dark hair is gone. Now, so the cattle, the most important ingredient, utensil that we have. But you see, we also have 4 bowls. So, Chef Vicki, would you put those in front? Now, the first bowl is awareness. Now, awareness is being alive. We are alive. I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm alert. I'm enthusiastic. I'm not going, I'm not sleeping my life away. I am aware of the goodness of life. I'm aware of who I am and who he is and who you are. Are you aware? Okay. Thank you for giving all of that. That's awareness. Now the second bowl is all about control. Now you say, oh no, control. That sounds very, very bad. But it's not control. It's about self-mastery, self-discipline, self-observation. It's self-regulation. It's a good control. So we want lots of that in our soup. Yes? Yes. So we have lots of control. Now the third bowl is balance. It's like the high wire of life. When too much of this doesn't. I mean, it makes a sour soup. We have to balance life. Not too much this way or that way. We have to eat well. We have to sleep well. Laurie's helping me. Thank you, Laurie. And so we put in balance into our life because we need plenty of balance. And the last utensil we need is one that holds the flow of life. You know, without the flow, everything gets stopped up. We need to take away any barriers in consciousness, and we need to make sure that we are in harmony with ourselves and with one another.
What do you call that?
This is flow.
Flow?
Flow.
I thought it was love.
Okay.
It changed since the last time. All right, good. I'm sure it's much more balanced.
It is the flow of
Thank you.
love.
Yes.
So there we go. And that is why my assistant is so important
that's
to me.
right.
So,
That's very
so
important.
okay,
Yes,
now we've got the kettle and the bowls, and now we have, before we do that, the measure. Now, if we put in too much of one thing, what would happen? Too much
balance.
out of balance, which we
Yeah,
know we need.
yeah.
So we have to be very careful, and it goes back to law, go back to universal law, that what we give out, we do receive. So we want to just put just the right amount. So, Ricky, thank you. Thank you, Ricky. Good, Ricky. Thank you. Now, Ricky, take. I need help. Okay, so Ricky now is taking the fourth utensil, and that is the ladle, because this is beginning to harmonize everything in consciousness. Ricky, hold the soup in. And it begins to start smelling good in consciousness. But Ricky, there's one thing that we need. One last thing.
Oh, yes.
We got to have the fire in the belly. We got to want to have piece of soup. Ricky. Okay. So we're going to make sure we get it just the right temperature. And we're going to make sure that we stay with, when we hold and hold and hold and desire peace in our hearts, what do we get?
Peace.
Peace of soup. God bless you this Christmas season of peace.
Thank you. Thank you. Now let's get serious. When we think about peace, we have all kinds of really different thoughts about it. And it can be confusing to us if we're not careful. The lack of peace is something maybe we hold as our shadow side. It's something we hold in the darkness. And yet when we allow ourselves to admit that we're not at peace, we are able to then dissipate this illusion that we're not peaceful and understand that we are creatures of peace. We've been created in peace. We've been created as peace. And if we look back at the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible as we call it, we know that Isaiah made a prediction. And most people credit that prediction of the coming of Jesus. What some historians know today is really was a prediction of the next king's son. But that's beside the point. It still is important that he had a vision. And what he said is that as this idea came into being, which is that a Messiah would come and he would raise the people of Israel up together and bring them back together. And as he brought them back together, what would happen is that they would then take over the world. They would literally be in charge of the world. And he said, and he shall judge between the nations and reprove many peoples, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Isaiah 2:4. Some people think that Isaiah then was also praying about the fact that the Israelites were in exile and they'd be brought back home and have a Messiah to lead them. One of the things that we need to do in order to have this recipe of peace is to learn to pray properly. How many people since you were a child have heard people say, let's pray for peace? Okay, and how well has it done? Outside of ourselves. Not very well, right? I mean, we're seeing challenges today. And what we have to understand is that peace does not come from out there. So sometimes what happens, you see people, we've been praying for peace, but we've been praying for a God out there to divinely intervene and fix things. And that never happens. We are the vehicles for peace. We are the ones who bring peace into the world and into our own lives. So this prayer of divine intervention we know doesn't work. And you know, one of the things that happens is that terrorists even pray before they go out and do whatever damage they're going to do. Football teams pray, right? They both pray at the same time that the other one will be victorious, that they're going to be the ones who win. And we know there's only one winner. And so what we have to understand is that we cannot use prayer by looking through conflict to get an answer, to have this peace come within ourselves. What happens when we look outside of ourselves and we see the conflict and we start to look at the world level, if you would, okay? Then we then start to get confused and we start to take in what the world is saying and we start to get real frustrated with it and anxious about it and sometimes fearful about it. And yet, we have the capacity, when all that's going on, to be at peace with one another. And we do that through the power of scientific prayer, or, as we say in Unity, affirmative prayer. Other New Thought groups call it scientific prayer. They call it a treatment. And that's what prayer really is. It's a treatment. And affirmative prayer is directed inward rather than outward. And when I direct it inward, what I am affirming is that I am at peace. And if there's anything barring that peace, that it will come up to be healed. That I will actually grow in my understanding of who I am and what I am. And that shadow side, we talked about this in the Course in Miracles this morning, that shadow side dissipates. It really does when we're willing to bring it up and look at it. It's only when we try to keep it in darkness, when the ego says, oh, this is a terrible thing, it's only then that we get trapped and stay in darkness. And with prayer comes a new perspective, a new way of looking at things. Let me give you an illustration. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, a poet, an American poet, and Vicki and I had the pleasure of going by his home when we were in Maine, And he was a guy who desperately fell in love with a young woman. That young woman moved from Maine and moved to England. And he pursued her even after that, and she didn't want anything to do with him. Then she moved back home from England to Maine, and that pursuit, or to Boston actually, that pursuit continued. Because he was determined that he was going to marry this woman someday. And 11 years later, she finally said yes. So he stayed with it, obviously. Well, one of the things that happened, which was a tragedy for him, was that his daughter and his wife were making candles. And the candle wax fell onto her blouse and broke into flames. Most people don't know this. And so after a number of years of very successful marriage, the love of his heart, she was burned and died a few days later in a coma. He had done everything he could to save her life. He actually ended up with his skin 70% burned because of that. But obviously he survived. Or did he? Because what he says is that he was angry. He was angry with the world. He was angry with what he called God. He was angry with people, that this was unfair. He was the victim through and through. And he couldn't see anything except the negativity in the world. He wrote the poem, which is now put to a song, of course, today. I heard the bells on Christmas Day. Here's what it says. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. I thought how as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth and goodwill to men. And he said, and in despair I bowed my head. Remember this verse? There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And then something happened in consciousness. And that's what he was really writing about. He says, till the ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from night to day. He finally heard it. Peace on earth, goodwill to men, from within himself. And he said that my night has now become day. And it's a voice, a chime, a chant sublime of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And he understood what it meant within himself. That's what you and I have to strive for, is to understand what it means within ourselves. You know, there's a story about seeing eye dogs. I don't know if you know that, but they have to be very smart dogs to be trained. And there's one thing that's really hard for them to learn. And you'll probably be surprised by this, but it's hard for them to learn to look up. And symbolically, when we look up, in unity, we're looking within. When we're looking down at the ground, we're, in essence, metaphysically looking at the world we live in. And as long as we look down, we get caught up in that. But when we look up, when we look within, we can let go of all that and step into the peace that we truly are, that we've been meant to be. There was another Prince of Peace I want to share with you. Missionary Don Richardson spent many years among the primitive tribes in New Guinea. And he wrote a book entitled The Peace of Child, and he tells the story of two tribes in New Guinea who maintained a blood feud. You know, the Hatfield and McCoys of New Guinea, okay? And doing that, what happened is that over time, they would go to war. You know, they get their wounds healed, and then they go back at war, and get their wounds healed and back at war. And over a number of years, they finally determined that they were going to wipe each other out if they didn't do something. So the chief of one tribe and the chief of the opposing tribe got together and said, what can we do? And then they figured out what to do, and they called the tribes together. And what they did is that the chief of one tribe gave his newborn son to the chief of the other tribe to adopt. And said, as long as you take care of that child, I will guarantee you that we will not do war against you. And the other chief said, and I guarantee you as long as I have this child, we will never go to war against you. This was 100 years ago, approximately. And they've never gone to war since then. You see, they got a new perception of who they could be and what they could be, and they could step into it. And they released all of the stuff about each other and instead stepped into the truth of each other, and that's peace. It was called the peace child, this child was. Jesus had obviously some words about peace. He said, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Remember, we have to look up, not down at the world. We have to be in that place where we have been created to be, and we are really, and that's to become aware of who we are and what we are and how we control our lives, and that we determine peace. It is not determined by others. It's not outside of us. It's within us. And Jesus also said, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give it to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. Jesus also said, blessed are the peacemakers. Do not let your heart be troubled. Do not be afraid. That's the key. To step out of the fear into the light of love. To allow the darkness to become the day, as Longfellow did. To step into that moment where we just feel the power and the love and the grace of God as that which created us. And that our purpose is to literally radiate that peace and that love to others. It's easier to do sometimes at Christmas. I mean, I lived in the New York metropolitan area for about just under 20 years. And one of the things I found at Christmas, man, I mean, you go to New York City, it was fantastic. It really is. How many of you have been there at Christmas time? Isn't it? It's just alive with energy, positive energy. And some people say that during the year it leaves. But I found it was always like that. I guess because I saw it that way. And so that time of the year is not the only time of the year to feel the peace. It's all year long to feel the peace, to be an expression of the peace, to be the love that the world needs to see and become. Paul said, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. Since as members of one body you were called to peace, and be thankful. He said, again, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. He was saying, dwell in your hearts. He wasn't saying, let Christ visit you on occasion. Okay? You know? He wasn't saying, well, invite him in and he'll come in. He was saying, it's already there. The Christ is resident within you. And when we understand that, we don't have to look outside of ourselves for any kind of peace, for any kind of love. Because we have the power to step into that love and to become that peace that love is, that harmony and harmonizing force in the world. When we step into that place, we step into a place of transformation, where we feel our lives changing, where we begin to make our priorities a little differently, where we start to look at things around us and the isness of it rather than as opposed to us or against us or for us. We stop weighing what's good and bad, and we start to say we are living in the inness of the Christ, the isness of the Christ, that we are here accepting what is, and we want to change it. But we can only do that through dialogue. We can only do that through the true meaning of peace. We can only do that as we behold the Christ in each and every person. There was a proverb that says, when there is righteousness in the heart, there is beauty of character. When there is beauty of character, there is honor in the home. When there is honor in the home, there is order in society. And when there is order in society, there is peace in the world. Be peaceful, not just this Christmas season, but all year long. It's within you, it is you, and I affirm that for you. Thank you. And so if our ushers would now come